Supreme Court of the United States does have immunity, and it appears that the decision is limited to his official acts.
And we begin with breaking news from France, where the country's far-right party is celebrating what appears to be a dramatic win over President Emmanuel Macron's centrist party. They now appear set to take the biggest number of seats in France's parliament after today's first round of elections in a stinging defeat for Macron. Macron shocked everyone and called a surprise election just weeks before Paris is set to host the world for the Olympic Games. Far-right leader Marine Le Pen warning her supporters to solidify their power by showing up for next weekend's second round of voting.
We need an absolute majority in order to enact that change that the country is desperately in need of.
President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border.
Look, guys, gone in 2021.
Wait.
It's a wild guess why, but
Look.
we're running
binary
codes here, guys, off the thing.
Get away from me.
Guys, we're right here at the cemetery, and this person was gone in 2023, and we're collecting binary codes. We have both of our phones on airplane mode, so it collects no binary codes at all. But when you get close to her grave, look, you had a number right there. Get close. Look, 2022, guys. Binary codes up the ass right there.
The deep state is those people within the U.S. government that are career employees that cannot be fired by people that we elect, by the Congress or the president. There are the FCC, the CIA, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the IRS. Are these people in control? Can they enact laws? Fuck yes. They're called regulations. For every law that Congress passes, and we elect Congress to pass our laws, there are 20 regulations enacted by federal agencies that have far more impact on our lives than anything Congress can possibly pass. Is there a deep state? Yes. Can we fire these people? No. Can presidents fire them? No. It's designed that way so that political parties and political interests cannot affect the deep state. Do you understand the nightmare of our situation, people? Since 1975, 200,000 regulations have been passed by our federal agencies, encompassing 800,000 pages of fine print.
Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Monday, July 1st, when the first of the month actually falls on a Monday, huh? We're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free, my friends. It is the year 2024, just if you're watching this later and wondering what year it was when we talked about these things. I want to welcome you on X, Rumble, and YouTube, of course, in the live chat here. It's been going round and round already. Spooky Spoon is here. Jennifer, good to see you. I saw Girl Sees Dragon, Little Light Warrior. Welcome. Sean Lindsay is here. Divinius. I always call you Divinius, but I think it's Divinus King. Good to see you, my friend. Jennifer, Faye, Cypher 9, Allison. Who else have I seen? Free. Erica is here. Good to see you. Phoenix, a scapegoat. Haven't seen you in a minute in a live chat. Raymond. Hello, my friend. Empath Lady. Army. And so many friends. Thank you all. All right, let's dive into it. Big weeks behind us, big weeks ahead of us. We are in such a informational overload at sometimes that I believe that we sometimes miss how much is going on. But this is, of course, part of the idea of the whole game that they're playing. So currently, they're overloading the field with information. So we're looking at some things that really matter. One of the things that happened just a few days ago, the Supreme Court is making a lot of decisions these days. As you just saw, they decided that it wasn't specifically, I think, a Trump decision. It was based on the Trump case, of course, but it was about presidential immunity. What does that mean? It basically means that when you're president, you have immunity for your official acts. Now, we could go back and forth about whether that's good or not. I don't think you could get anything done in any office if you didn't have that, right? However, that should have its limitations. We all believe that for sure. So this is just, if we talk within the system of things, this is probably not a bad decision, I would say, but one that is far more important, and I believe one of the most important decisions that the Supreme Court has made, period, kind of went undetected because there's a little bit of nuance to it, and it is to overrule the Chevron doctrine, which was a decision from 1984. And I found this little clip by a constitutional attorney, and I think she did a really good job at compressing it. So I just want to watch this with you, and then we can talk a little bit more about that.
Did it. The Supreme Court has officially overturned Chevron deference. This is probably one of the most important Supreme Court decisions in modern history. And if you don't know what Chevron is, that's okay. They don't really teach it in schools, but I'll explain it to you. I graduated from Yale Law School, where I focused in constitutional law, so I'll try to decode this rather simply because you need to know how this works. So basically, Chevron deference dates all the way back to 1984 in the Reagan era. It was a major Supreme Court case having to do with the EPA, where the court essentially ruled that where a rule or statute is ambiguous, the federal courts must defer to an agency's interpretation of that rule. Most day-to-day life and functions for you and I are run by federal agencies. For example, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, makes rules about clean air and the environment. The FDA makes rules about food, the CDC, the Department of Education, the Department of Transportation. We have the FBI, the IRS, the VA, the list goes on and on. They essentially run our country, and that's who we, the people, interact with the most. Now, here's the kicker. The leaders of these agencies are not elected. They're appointed by the executive branch, the president, which means when a president or the administration changes, the rules and the leaders of the agencies generally change. So they'll flip-flop from Democrat to Republican, and back again. Anyway, most Republicans and Libertarians absolutely despise Chevron deference. They believe it gives government and agencies way too much power, and especially for people who are not elected. Still, the idea is that these people are experts, doctors, scientists, whoever, and they should know best how to interpret the rules. And because there are so many rules and so many functions and so many people in the United States, it just makes sense to have experts and specialists cover them. But the court today completely did away with that and said, nope. The case is Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo, who is the Secretary of Commerce. The court's holding is highlighted below. The APA requires courts to exercise their independent judgment in deciding whether an agency has acted within its statutory authority, and courts may not defer to an agency's interpretation of a law simply because a statute is ambiguous. Chevron is overruled. The decision was split 6-3, conservatives on one side, liberal justices on the other. And Kagan in her dissent is like, this is absolutely crazy. She writes, what actions can be taken to address climate change or other environmental challenges? What will the nation's healthcare system look like in the coming decades? Or the financial or transportation system? What rules are going to constrain the development of AI? The court has basically taken all regulatory power away from these agencies in the federal government and placed it into their own hands. This also gives power back to private organizations and corporations. For example, say the EPA has a rule about where you can dump your waste in products, and BP or some other oil company is like, hey, we don't like this because it's super expensive. We're just going to dump our oil wherever we feel like it, wherever it's cheaper. This makes it a lot harder to control their actions. This is most likely going to save a lot of money for some very rich people. Conservatives have been trying to get rid of this for years, and they've finally done it. This is a huge win for DJT today.
And mic mute. I think she broke it down really well. And let's not look at this from a political standpoint. I'll give you a story to better understand how this works. So we had an acquaintance that his family, it was a multi-generational small company, and they had come up with a protocol of teas, literally teas, that people that had the big C, you know, sickness and all kinds of tumors and whatnot, were taking that protocol, the T protocol, literally a T protocol, and we're having amazing results. So much so that Big Pharma got very much involved. And here's what happened. This company, because they were so successful, they were small operation, family operation, received letter after letter after letter where they were informed that there were new regulations in place that they had to adhere to. These new regulations included new testing, included new qualifications, certificates, and whatnot. At the end, what had happened was they had come up with so many new rules and regulations, stipulations about their production facilities, about everything, that this small family owned business that was helping so many people at a fraction of the cost of the big pharma companies had to go through a licensing and certification and qualification process that cost him hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, up to the millions, until they couldn't afford it any longer and had to close up shop, which of course was exactly the initial goal. And this is what, when you have agencies where bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, appointed bureaucrats get to create, for every law that's passed, at least 20 regulations, right? When they get to do that, they can pretty much do whatever they want. And whom do they serve? Well, here's what I want you to do. Let's take the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, because they have tremendous power over almost everything you consume. And I want you to look up something. Look up the FDA senior officials that are appointed, and then look at the boards of directors of companies like Bayer or Monsanto or Pfizer or whatnot, and you will see something very strange. The same people who are appointed into these FDA senior positions and who then choose their teams, right, keep flip-flopping back between the FDA and the board of directors of these companies. Is there a conflict of interest? Oh, yeah, hell yeah, there's a conflict of interest. You know, for those of you who remember Donald Rumsfeld, he was instrumental in pushing through, in his position in the FDA, he was flip-flopping back and forth between the government and the big corporations. He was instrumental in pushing things like high fructose corn syrup, I believe he was pushing through, and other things that are today in every product that are exactly pushed through these means. Now, the problem was, until this new Supreme Court ruling, that if you are a small company, which this Supreme Court ruling, those were fishermen. Those is a small fishing operation that had to pay $700 a day. So they were suing and saying, listen, we have no course here, because when we go to the courts say, we'll refer you back to the EPA, the very agency who set up the rule that you need to pay $700. What's the EPA going to say? Well, this is the rule that we made. Now, this comes back to actually the court system. So it has to be decided in a court of law whether that regulation is just and fair. This doesn't make it perfect. It doesn't mean that the court system, the justice system, isn't corrupt, but it takes a tremendous amount of power away from the bureaucratic state. And here's the problem with the bureaucratic state. When we look at the government as a whole, we have a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of people who are elected. And even those elections are very questionable. We talk about this a lot, right? I mean, we all know the process. Don't get me wrong. I'm not naive, but the vast majority of the combined 5.8 million people in federal government, 5.8 million people. That includes employees and independent contractors who are oftentimes on long-term contracts with the government. 5.8 million people. The vast majority is not elected. The vast 99% of the people are not elected in those positions. So if they're not elected, they can't get fired by elected people. And this is where the whole problem moves in. Since the Chevron doctrine in 1984, the government spending in 1984 was roughly $835 billion, give or take. The federal, that's in 1984. The federal spending in 2023, $6.7 trillion. That's almost 10 times as much as in 1984. So you see, these decisions have a huge impact. And most problematically, these regulations, once again, are usually not passed for your safety, for my safety, for the environment protection, whatever. They are passed to protect the big corporations who can spend $5 million a year on a regulatory process, who can pay these fees. They pay them out of their pocket easily, that smaller, better products or better companies can pay. And this is from a libertarian approach, from a free market approach. This is a huge step in a positive direction. The reason why the best products and the best services that are the healthiest, that are the safest, that are the most environmentally friendly, that are truly green, the reason why these products are not the most successful ones is usually not because they're not good enough. They're far better than the other products. It's because they can't compete in the same market under the same conditions with the big companies that can actually go through these regulatory processes that unelected bureaucrats create. So this Chevron decision is bigger than what meets the eye, and I think we're going to see a trickle-down effect over the next months and years. So this is actually a very positive thing. I rarely say this about anything coming out of DC, but this can be a very, very good thing. So we're going to have to see what happens to the bureaucratic state after this, because this is the real problem. The real problem is that these people are sitting deeply embedded in the government in some office somewhere that you never heard of, in some little sub-agency you never heard of, and they yield so much power because they can write up anything. They can write up any regulation. Any regulation. Okay, so this is a Chevron thing. Then we have this Trump immunity deal. There's another big case pending at the Supreme Court, which we don't know whether that's going to be decided, which is the election interference case of 2020. And when we report on these things, by the way, I want to say I have no partisanship. We don't endorse a candidate. We're looking at this whole game from a pretty much bird's eye view. But here's what I have been saying, and I'll say this again. As far as I'm concerned, there doesn't need to be an election. What there needs to be is a proper enforcement of the 2020 election. If we don't start somewhere, it doesn't mean that, it doesn't care. It doesn't matter whom you support. You could hate someone, but if there is a system in place, and if the people choose someone to be their elected leader for whatever reason they do it, then that's who's supposed to be in charge. So we had that in 2020. The people were not heard, but someone in the background, people made different decisions. Now that needs to be adjudicated properly, and it needs to be remedied. That's what needs to happen. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter what this election is, because the last election needs to be first fixed. That's, make it proper. But there's an interesting signal. I saw this little clip of Donald Trump at one of his rallies, and I can't make sense of it unless, of course, he knows that something is about to come through the airwaves, because what he's alluding to in this clip seems to be bigger than the immunity case. It might just be the immunity case, but it might be the election interference case or something else altogether. You tell me what you think of this.
I don't know if we can really survive 5 more months. This is the most dangerous time in the history of our country, in my opinion, and we have a transition period, because hopefully there has to be a transition. The whole world should know that while Biden is the worst president in the history of America, our country is going to be strong again, and it's going to be very soon. I want the enemies to know that, because we have a 5-month transition period, and I want the enemies to know, don't play around with us during this 5-month period. Don't play around.
Okay, so as far as I know, elections are usually in November, right? Beginning of November, first Tuesday in November. And then around January 20th, it's inauguration. Now, this is about a 2.5 month period. That's usually a transition period between two presidencies. I've never heard of a 5-month transition period. I don't know what that means, but we are about 5 months away from the election, right? So it's July, August, September, October, November, give or take. So I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means. Why 5 months? What will happen during those 5 months? Why this particular? Why not between August and then, or between? I don't know. I really don't know. But it sure sounds like it was a signal and a message. And again, I don't have any other information than just seeing this clip and thinking, okay, this is rather strange. So we're going to see if indeed, let's say Biden steps down or announces he's not going to run, or steps down from his presidency. Who knows? Now that would create, of course, some upheaval in the world. Not that it's totally unexpected. If indeed the Supreme Court surprisingly comes out with a decision about election interference, and let's say hypothetically rules in favor that they finally recognize all the evidence of election interference, manipulation of 2020, well, then of course we would have a chaotic period until the election, or there will be no election. Which, it's I've never seen as many people that are in senior positions or have been. Our friends that have been, high up in that food chain, military and whatnot. I've never heard so many people talk about there will be no election. There's always some talk about that before every election since, I don't know, Bush or whatever. But it's never been like this, and the landscape has never been like this. So we'll see what will happen. Of course, today, another big thing has happened, which is sort of unprecedented. Steve Bannon is going to prison today. Steve Bannon is, one of the most influential advisors to Trump. He was, I believe he was official chief of staff in the beginning of his presidency, and then he was a senior advisor. He was instrumental in the campaign. He is an instrumental founder of the modern MAGA movement. Of course, MAGA has existed before. And yes, I'm well aware of what MAGA means in the hierarchy of the satanic church. Yes, I'm well aware what that means too. Again, I'm just saying. But he's definitely one of the most instrumental ones. Now he is on air, or was on air every single day in the War Room, Steve Bannon's War Room, which, these all have a lot of influence over people. And some of the things very positive, some of the things not very positive in my view. But we have to be nuanced about this. But this is really a bad thing. When you can, so Steve Bannon is going to prison today because he has defied a congressional subpoena by the January 6th committee. And he has defied that subpoena because his legal counsel told him two things. Number one, the way that the January 6th commission was put together was illegal, according to the rules of the House and the Senate, was illegal. And the second thing was that he has executive privilege, which means that he can't talk about any of the things that he knew or didn't know officially, because he was under executive privilege, being in some way involved with the presidency of Donald Trump at that time. None of these things were new. These things have happened before. Plenty of people have defied and not showed up for congressional subpoenas before. He's the first person, maybe Peter Navarro, President Trump's chief economic advisor, but one of the first people to go to prison for this. And this comes on the heels of the $1.5 billion ruling against Alex Jones. This comes on the heels of deplatforming so many people. It's quite incredible, the persecution of populists, if you will, people that want to empower the people a little more. And again, I'm not part of any of these movements, but I see some positive things in all of them. Of course, what we see generally, and this is where we go into world news, we just saw this incredible thing that happened in France that is weird. Macron, after the EU elections, another farce, called a surprise election in France. Basically, I think 10 days or 2 weeks time. That's crazy. And unsurprisingly, Marine Le Pen's party got the majority of votes in the first round. They have a little bit of a different system. So France is unsurprisingly moving far, far right, which most countries are. And it seems, if you look at the whole thing, it seems so planned. It seems so schemed. It seems so contrived. It's not even funny. And while you could say, well, this is a good move everywhere, whether that's Hungary, whether that's France, whether that's Austria, whether that's Germany, whether that's the United States, that it's a good move, that the people are moving towards more common sense, that they're moving back to more conservative values. I think it's a planned trap. You had this fake far left movement, fake because the majority was never on board. The majority was never on board with the crazy wokeness of the last 5-6 years. Never, especially last 3-4 years. Not the majority. So you pushed countries in that direction, which you knew would have the reaction of the people that they were going to go far right. Because here's what happens. When you push too fast for too much, that's always what happens. When you do it slow, not so much of a problem, but when you do it so fast, right? Then the people rebel. When you send the drag queens into the kindergartens, when you do transitioning of children, when you put them on puberty blockers, when you outlaw basically the religion of the land, when you put mass migration streams into countries from people from vastly different cultures and backgrounds, that is what happens every single time. The country pushes to okay, we got to stop this. So this is, in my view, this is the trap. The trap is that people are going to elect these leaders that are going to seem to do some very good things, and very soon they're going to really hit the gas hard and do some horrible things because of the being drunk on power. So this is, well, people are supposed to stay within the arena of left-right politics, right? The real alternative, if we're going to talk about governance, right? And I want to even change that word. But for now, if we're going to talk about governance, there's a real alternative that is not being talked about anywhere. At least not meaningful yet, but it should be. And that a government, the head of an or the management of a nation, if you will, should not be ideologically flavored, really, but a libertarian approach where whatever you are, however you feel, whatever your preferences are, doesn't really matter, because there's a very, very limited scope, and the government is extremely limited in what they can or cannot do. And that is really the approach that nobody wants to talk about. So what is happening is that these leaders in all these nations, they're appearing to be for limited government. They're appearing to be wanting to push, all these things down that the previous administrations have done. But every time that they come to power, they use and use the tools that they get to do things in their way, but just as bad as the others. And they use all these tools and abuse them every single time. The third alternative is that people empower themselves and say, hey, we've had this for way too long. You've been way too powerful up there. We need to really, we really need to take away your power and empower ourselves more. And this is really what we're seeing, what should happen more. And leaders, of course, will try to appease libertarian-style voters and people who want less government. But I haven't seen anyone who's really doing it. The last really great, as I've said before, libertarian in politics was Dr. Ron Paul. Not perfect, and we could talk back and forth about what could be better, but his voting record was pretty great as a congressman. And the nomination for the Republican Party was stolen from him overnight when the RNC changed rules on him, where he had the biggest grassroots movement until that point. Incredible. So what we're seeing right now is officially, I believe the page was turned. And so the establishment, the media, the corporations, they're going to start moving towards the right officially again after years of being on the left like crazy. And a lot of people, of course, are going to say it's amazing. A big corporation here in the United States, Tractor Supply, just came out and said, we're not going to do diversity, equity, inclusion anymore. We're not going to be part of this woke nonsense. We're going to focus on our core values. We're going to focus on supporting our community and veterans and whatnot. And so naturally, a lot of people will cheer and say, yay, we won. I would say careful. Careful, because unless we shatter centralized power into 1,000 pieces, other than protection, there's no need for such a centralized power as it is now seen in every nation in the world. We need to shatter it into 1,000 pieces and empower small communities to have their power in their communities to govern themselves. That's the antidote. The antidote to bad government is not more government. Look at almost every nation on earth has had a huge expansion in government. Again, between 1984 and 2023, we had 1984, we had a spending of 800 and something billion. In 2023, 40 years later, we had 6.7 trillion. So the answer is not more government. The answer is shatter that power and make communities strong, self-regulated, and self-sufficient again. That's the answer. And if that happens, whatever movement inspires people to do that, and I hope we're a part of that, that is the antidote. So that's what we're standing for. That's what we're going to stand for. And more concentration. You know, I'll go one more time back to this Trump phenomenon, where one man has risen to the savior/king status in so many people's hearts and minds, where all their dreams, all their hopes are projected on one man. It's a king. It's a monarchy in their hearts. But can you believe it that in America, which has the biggest anti-monarchy tradition, because of the history, because of the founding fathers, because of the Declaration of Independence, because of the Revolutionary War, because of the Constitution and how it came about. And yet today we find ourselves in a position where so many people pray for the king to return and fix it all for them. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's the antithesis of what this nation was founded on, at least on paper, or, you know. So I think it's going to get a little worse before it gets better, but the truth is that we need to do this. This is an inside job. That's the realization that people come to. There's something powerful that happens when, for the first time in your life, and you might not even be aware of it, for the first time in your life, you're not waiting. You're not just waiting until the next election happens, or you're just waiting for this next thing to happen, or for this next person to come, or this person to finally do something, or finally fulfill their commitment, or finally live up to their promise, whether that's a spouse, whoever. When you, for the first time, assume full responsibility and you say, fuck it, this has been going on way too long, nothing significantly changes, I'm going to just focus here on this and I'm going to be part of the solution. When that penny drops, there's something powerful that begins to happen in your life. Because every day you wake up with the conviction that you are the one who forges your destiny with your creator, naturally. But that you are the one who forges your own destiny, that it's not a president, an administration, a party, whatever. When that happens, and it has to happen, which means it has to become a practical reality in your life, things truly begin to change and you begin to see things differently. Thank you, Charlotte. Appreciate your always your contributions. How very generous of you. Thank you. And that is what all this charade, what these charades need to hopefully instill in us again and inspire us to learn. I don't care how challenging a situation is, because I know that your ability to overcome it and to be part of your own solution in your life is greater than that challenge. The reason why I know this is because this is what I've experienced, what we've experienced. No matter how big the challenge is, our ability to overcome it, transmute it, and change for the better is bigger. So this will play out. This game on the outside will play out. And some of it will be beneficial and most of it won't. But that doesn't mean that we have to continue playing it. And this is where it all stops and where a new beginning starts. And it is an inside job. I have seen people say, hey, you know, this guy got elected for president, I'm selling my business. Now this guy got elected for president, I'm starting a new business. Or, you know, I can't do it because of government. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate it. I can't do it because of this. And then all of a sudden they say, you know what? I don't know what I've been waiting for. I'm going to just do what I can with what I have where I am. Do what I can with what I have where I am. And within a few months, within a short year, they've transformed their life in more ways than in the previous 30 years. Can you imagine if we can get just a few more people, maybe a few 100,000, maybe a few million, to take their eyes off of this game and hope and wait for something to happen, something big, mass arrests, quantum financial system, whatever they're waiting for, and just go, no, I will do everything I can to become the best possible version of myself, to create the best possible life and inspire everyone around me to do it by being that example. Can you imagine what happens? And this is it. This is the moment. July 1st, 2024. This is the moment. Not August, not September, not October. Not let's wait what Trump does. Let's wait what the White Hats do. Let's wait what the Democrats do. Fuck it. Step up. And in your mind, shrink those leaders to their proper size, those wannabe elites. And give yourself the proper significance in your life. You are the lead protagonist in your life. You are the main character. You're the hero of your story. All I'm asking you is to start living up to it. I already see it in you. I feel you. Even though we're separated by a screen, I can feel you. I can feel the hero that you are of your own life. And when I walk, and we walk out there in the world and we do our thing, I sometimes see people that have awakened to that realization. They walk differently. They talk differently. They're not pompous. They're not above anyone else. They just know who they are. They're not afraid. They've taken charge. They're taking responsibility for their lives. They're inspiring. They're beautiful. They're shining lights. That's what this moment is about. Not about Trump, not about Biden, not about Bannon, not about Le Pen or anyone else. This moment is about you and you becoming the protagonist and the main character of your story again. And when that happens, thank you once again, Mike. Really appreciate it. Or no, this is Nikki. Thank you, Nikki. And when that happens, it's game over for all the power players, because that's the power that they held over you. It's making you believe that you're so small, that you can't. And here's my evidence. And this is my final point. I'll rest my case for today after this. My final point is, if what I say wasn't true, that you are incredibly powerful, that you are a spark of the divine creator, then why? Why are you and your powers and your abilities, thank you, Sandy, really appreciate it. Why are you and your powers and your abilities being fought on all levels every day? Why do you need to be poisoned from the air, from the water, from the food, from the airwaves, from the EMFs, from everything? Why? And yet still here you are, so powerful, so grand, so beautiful. Thank you all for your contributions. Yet here you are defying their attacks. Can you imagine how powerful you must be for them to focus all their attention on fighting you and your abilities? The entire purpose is for you to never awaken to those abilities. This is what the awakening really is, my friends. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Mike. Y'all are so generous. Thank you. This is what this is. So if it wasn't true, what I'm saying, they wouldn't have to do it, because you're just small, powerless, tiny. But you're not. You are not. Thank you, Annie. You're not. You're grand. You're beautiful. You got this. We got this. So I want you to look into the mirror today. And I want you to send yourself a big wave of love and appreciation for the grand co-creator that you are. And this is how we're turning this all around. One spirit, one beautiful being at a time. Not one savior figure out there wearing a red hat or whatever, white hat, it doesn't matter. This is it, my friends. I love you all. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you for your contributions. We really appreciate it. And you know we love you. We appreciate you. And we'll be back with you again very, very soon.
Right now, you could be only a few clicks away from experiencing something amazing, something that has changed thousands of lives all over the world. I'm talking about a high consciousness field similar to those at pilgrimage sites and sacred places. It's where people go to heal, to connect, and to become the best possible version of themselves. With FLFE, you can bring such a high consciousness field into your home right now. It's a spiritual quantum technology based on the work of Nikola Tesla. Better sleep, more energy, greater well-being, improved finances, electrosmog mitigation. These are only some of the things people on the FLFE service are experiencing. Try it now for 15 days completely free of charge, no credit card needed. Just click on a link down below to start your free, no strings attached FLFE trial right now.